Hey there, Squirrel Army. How's it going for today? I want to discuss embracing playing suboptimally.
You can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing.
Alrighty, so discussing embracing playing suboptimally. So I've said this sort of thing here and there before, but I think it bears repeating because I think sometimes we all get a little bit lost in the shuffle of Magic, especially with lots of powerful cards coming out and the sort of power creep of the format and whatnot. And a lot of that can have to do with like this whole perception of your deck has to be so strong or whatever and so forth and so on and that sort of thing and whatnot. So you can't just run like the cards that you want to play and that sort of thing. Like you're just janky 6 mana, draw 2 cards, whatever kind of cards or whatever, that sort of thing. They don't really do quite enough for like the rest of the format. But that's not a real reason that you should not want to play these cards. If you want to play the cards that you like, then you should go ahead and do it. Because again, like unless you're playing a CDH deck, you're not playing a optimal version of the deck. And unless you're a CDH player and you're pretty much perfect, you're playing that deck suboptimally as well. So why not, just be like, well, dude, those guys make mistakes too. I'm only human and I'm going to make mistakes. And hey, I just want to sit down, jam some games with some friends, have some laughs, have some fun, see what happens, like just embracing that and saying, hey, this is what it is. What it is. Adam's sitting there with 2 lands on turn 12 and has done nothing the whole game. Or Adam's sitting over there with 12 lands on turn 12 and has done nothing the whole game because he's just flooded out. Uh, but that's one of those things. Like, oh, well, it happens. It happens a lot, but I'm still playing a lot of cards that I really, really like in my decks. Like there's a bunch of cards that I think sometimes I go, well, I'm playing this more because quote unquote I need to play it. But like a lot of cards that I kind of play like if you say, oh, the categories like ramp, card draw, wraths, whatever, that sort of stuff. Yes, I'm playing those sorts of things, obviously. But I'm also going, you know what? I want to figure out what works for my deck or what I kind of want to do with my deck. So I kind of want to play some of the more janky, fun cards that I think, oh, that'd actually be really cool to play. That'd be interesting to play or whatever, that sort of thing. Or cool, I just opened this in a pack or whatever, or this is one of my favorite cards of all time or whatever, or this is one of my favorite strategies of all time kind of thing. I still play the strategies that I like. I still play the cards that I like in those slots sometimes. Like I go, well, am I going to run something that's just strictly really good, like, I don't know, Beast Whisperer, or am I going to run something that actually kind of synergizes with kind of what I'm wanting to do and something that maybe it's a card I haven't ever played before, but now that I get to play it, I go, oh, cool, this card's actually pretty darn good. Now it's becoming one of my, more pet cards or whatever you want to call them, or more favorite cards or whatnot. So, like, you do discover new cards by doing that, by going, you know what, I'm going to take, the scenic route of finding cards. I'm going to go on Scryfall or whatever else it is to look up, what's my deck doing? Say, for example, humans, because I've got a couple human-based decks. So I look for cards that are humans in my color combination, or maybe even things that say, choose a creature type or whatever, or whatnot, that sort of thing. Things that can be humans in addition to their other types or do other things, etc. Depends. But again, I'm looking for that kind of thing and then going, okay, well, how can I, find something that does what I want, i.e., draw me cards or ramp me or whatever else, destroy my opponent's stuff, that kind of fits within that theme. And each of my decks kind of is a little bit different in its own ways, but they all have a sort of similar feel in a lot of ways. They all feel like it's still my deck because, I've put a lot of my own personal, uh, touches onto the deck by looking for these cards, by finding these cards and going, you know what, that'd actually be pretty darn good for this deck, or going through cards and going, oh yeah, this is a card and it exists and it kind of does what I want, but I don't think it's very good, but maybe it's a placeholder card just for now or whatever, and, whatnot. So hopefully I'll replace it later or whatnot. But still, it's one of those things that a lot of the other cards that are in the deck I'm super hyped for. I'm like going, oh yeah, even like some of the more uninteresting cards, like I'm just like catching up with the Lost Caves of Ixalan now, and updating some of my decks online and being like, oh yeah, cool, I've got to find myself some Get Losts because that's a really awesome, removal spell. I really liked Destroy Evil, even though that wasn't perfect. I felt like it was pretty decent. Because it get to destroy something power 4 greater or mana value 4 greater or something 4 greater, whatever it is, and destroy an enchantment. And I did have Angelic Ascension for a while as well because I was like, well, Exile is good, and if I'm dying to a flying 4/4, then I've got more things to worry about, kind of thing, than than giving them a 4/4 flyer isn't the worst thing, but it's not the best thing, obviously. But if that's the one thing that's really killing me, then my deck has gone seriously wrong. But still, that does happen. But still, it's just one of those things. It might not be such a flashy card or whatever to a degree or whatever, but it's still like, oh, that's cool because that actually, was a card that I was kind of looking up and going, oh, well, no one's really playing this card very much. You know what? I'll just run it because, I need some removal. And then they just printed a better version of it, and I go, oh, well, that's cool. It just does what I was doing, but better, So I'll just replace those, Destroy Evils with Get Lost. And maybe I'll get rid of Angelic Ascension too, because I actually feel like giving them a 4/4 flyer is too much. I felt like maybe back before, I had Fateful Absence before and that, but I felt like, oh, you're giving them something that they can then use to, recoup their losses. But actually, again, you're trading off that for sort of semi-efficiency, and you're always going to be giving them something, especially with all the really good removal, swords, path, that sort of stuff. So you're always kind of giving them something with a lot of those spells. So, or you're always having some sort of flexibility, or you're always having some downside, like Bitter Triumph, and things like that. So it's just one of those things. Or what was it? Not Go for the Throat. Infernal Grasp, just lose 2 life or whatever. So those sorts of effects and that sort of thing, it might not be that hype for some people, but I was hyped somewhat for that because it was like, dude, this is again, not that was a underplayed card, but I was looking for that kind of thing, and it was just like, well, this does what I was already trying to do and does it better. So that's pretty darn good, as I said. But still, it's just one of those things when you're kind of going, I still want to play my other cards aren't just, well, that's a generically good card in a sense, but it's something that I already sort of thought to myself, well, that seems like that's a goodish effect. It's not like the best effect, but I need more removal, or I need more answers, or I need more things. So I'm just going to run this, even though it's probably not the best, but it's what I've got right now, or what I've got access to right now. So I'll just run it for now. And lo and behold, now they've printed a better version of it. So I do replace those sort of semi-stapley sort of cards when they do print a better version of it, or when I think to myself, well, actually, like, it's not that like bad to give them something, especially if they've got to work for it. So those clues, those map tokens, etc., all that other stuff that you give to your opponents, or you give them a beast, or you give them some life, or you give them a land, or whatever else it is that you're giving them, um, really just does not matter as much as the thing that you're removing. So like you don't care if they get to draw a card. You don't care if they, get to explore too, or whatever else it is, or whatnot, whatever it is, or you don't care that they've got a, 4/4 beast, or whatever else it is, whatever, a 4/4 elemental, or a 3/3 ape, or whatever else they've got. You're just like, I'm glad that they don't have the friggin' Kozilek, or whatever else that they had. Like, sometimes you can't really get around it because, again, like, you're like, well, it has indestructible, and that's sort of stopping me from getting rid of it. So unfortunately, I'm kind of stuck with it. But like, hopefully, I can get rid of it at some point down the line. And people, like, with like things like, especially the enchantment gods, God, they're annoying to get rid of because, like, you have to exile them, or you have to make people sacrifice them, which is why they're really good. And I don't run too many of them, but like, I've run some of them in some decks sometimes. Like, I used to run Karametra and that in a couple of my Selesnya decks, because it was just like, free lands when I cast creatures. Why not? Like, it's not part of my ramp package per se, but it's just kind of there, and it kind of is nice to get free lands and that sort of thing. Because again, you don't want to just be like drawing those lands, anyway, for the most part, after turn 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, that much. You want them in play, yeah, sure, but you don't want to be drawing them as much. You want to be like, I'm already getting ahead, haha, type thing. When it was my commander, it was a bit easy, but when it's in your deck, it's a little less reliable. So that's kind of why I decided, I like this card and that, but it's just not like really doing what I want it to be doing. Same with like lands and that, because I know some people don't really think about like lands as like being able to be like pet cards or whatever, but I think some lands can be like pet cards. Like, as I said, I've said this before, I like the Panorama cycle and a couple of those other card sort of cycles that, they tap for mana or generic mana, and then you can sacrifice them later on if you want to go get a basic land into play or whatever. Like, so for most of the game, you're just going to be sitting them there, and they're just going to be tapping for mana like a normal land would be. But if you're like color fix, you need your color fix, or if somebody's stupid enough to try and blow up your land fetches for another land, you're just like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just go get a land. Thanks, I guess. You just wasted your ghost quarter or whatever else on a land that wasn't really worth it. And that's another reason. Like, it's just one of those things. It's like, okay, you could have dealt with somebody else's guy's cradle or something else or whatever, rather than dealing with this. This isn't really that important, and I'm just going to go get a basic, so good work. I don't know, like, it's always like funny to me that some people will just go, what does that land do? I don't care, I'm blowing it up, or whatever, and things like that. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I'm just gonna sacrifice it and go get a land then. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, yeah. But anyway, I like a fair few things in the format, and I know everyone likes something different in the format to a degree. So again, that's the thing. Like, you've got to find what you like, and I really like, just straightforward, you know, sort of style of decks, And I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I always have my plan B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on and so forth in a lot of those decks as well, because I'm like, well, like, if I want one of these effects to an extent, I probably want multiple of these effects. Like, if I'm giving my stuff trample that doesn't naturally have trample, then I probably want more things that give like flying or trample or whatever else, some sort of form of evasion and that sort of thing. So like, and if you go, well, this might not be like somebody else's like idea of a cool card in a sense because it's seemingly a staple card, but you can like staple cards as well. I think like um. And you can like a card and not play it sometimes too. Like I really kind of like. I'm thinking I'm kind of coming around the corner on cards like Grasp of Fate and what's the one that Dismantling Wave that destroys one of each of your opponent's artifacts or enchantments. Grasp of Fate is similar to that, where you just exile one of each of your opponent's things underneath the enchantment, and they don't come back till you get rid of the Grasp of Fate. I used to not love those effects as much because I'm like, sorcery speed, and I always feel like you want to be able to react to kind of what your opponents are doing. You don't want to be sitting there and going, cool, I'm going to play this sorcery speed thing. But the thing is, like, we play a whole bunch of wraths, like, well, not a whole bunch, but we do play wraths in our decks, so, and, like, most of those are sorcery speed, well, almost all of them are sorcery speed, so again, like, and, like, all of your creatures are sorcery speed, and whatnot. So like it's one of those things where you go, well, the thing is, what am I doing with those creatures? Either I'm trying to be offensive or whatever with them, or in some way at least I'm trying to get ahead, ramp myself, draw myself some cards, whatever else it is, but I'm trying to be defensive with those cards. So I'm trying to protect myself from my opponent by saying, okay, I'm going to play this thing that's basically a ghostly prison effect plus a creature or whatever. So you can't attack me unless you pay the tax. Just to slow people down, plus it's body as well, so that really helps as well. Just being like, okay, if I really need to chump something and I'm close to dying, hey, it's a sort of sorcery speed answer again to the problem, but it's a very wide ranging kind of effect, so it really does help out sometimes. So like it's one of those things, like it's like, well, those are really good effects. And again, when you're talking about removal and that, most removal is pretty bad in most sense, like one-to-one removal at least. Like you're trading one card for another card, and the main reason you actually want to trade one card for one card, and I've said this a few times, is if you're directly losing the game, or if the thing that somebody has directly affects you from winning the game. Like if your opponent plays Rest in Peace and you're playing a graveyard deck, well, cool, I have to get rid of that Rest in Peace because I cannot play my game plan without the graveyard. So I need to get rid of that Rest in Peace. So that literally stops me from winning the game. So that means I've got no real chance to actually, enact my plan and get to the point of winning in any timely manner. So without that, I don't really have a game plan. So just saying, well, that card wrecks what I'm doing means that I have to get rid of it. So it's just one of those things that, like, if my opponent, it depends what you're playing again, because of course, like when you say, well, I've got counter spells, it becomes a little bit easier in some ways. But again, you're investing 9 times out of 10, not just a card, but you're also investing your time and your mana and your other resources that you could be using to further your own game plan, but you've also got to slow down your other opponent's game plans so that you just don't lose. But you don't, like, again, in 1v1 formats, it's a lot more easy to do the math and say, oh, well, this is bad for you, therefore it's good for me 100%. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Like, I've removed your thing for my thing, and yes, that's 1-to-1, but that didn't kill me, and that slowed you down, and, like, now I'm going to hopefully be able to keep my Teferi alive and ult my Teferi, or do this or do that, or whatever else my game plan is. Whereas in EDH, if you kill one of your opponent's things, well, your other two opponents didn't really use mana in that exchange, and you and that opponent have now gone down a card. So sometimes it's best not to like do things until the point at which, okay, I have to do this. Like, and again, like looking at the board and saying, well, that Draenith Magistrate is really annoying, or that you know Ristic Study is really annoying. But the thing is, like, is that Draenith Magistrate or that Ristic Study or whatever else it is, helping me or, hindering somebody else more than it's hindering me? So, that might be the thing that I might want to blow up in some regard. But the thing is, like, it's actually stopping somebody else that's over there that's about to, would probably just like win on the spot. So I'm just like, well, you know what? I'm just gonna like leave that there because I don't want, this person, like, not that I don't want somebody to play the game, which is like one of those things, but again, like if they're pretty much just going to be like, cool, I'm going to play Aurelia or whatever, I'm going to play Godo and I'm going to shoot it for Helm of the Host and cool, look, I win. Like, well, obviously, bro, that's not what I want you to do. Even if that's not what you're going to do, like, it's just one of those things, like, it's just nowhere near the time and place for me to like let you kill that thing just to let you friggin' like finally get to play your Godo and combo off. Like, I'm not ready to lose this game, so I'm not gonna get rid of that, that Draenith Magistrate, or I'm not gonna, if somebody's playing like a Storm deck or whatever, maybe that other player who's drawing a whole bunch of cards from Ristic Study is a big problem as well, but like the best I can do is just like try to chip away at both of the people as much as what I can, because those two are obviously the big threats. The person who could potentially win at any time with their storm combos, blah blah blah, and the person with the Ristic Study who's just drawing all the cards and getting all the gas and whatnot and that sort of thing. But they are protecting me in some ways, but they are like also looking for their own win con. So I know that's gone off on a big tangent there and whatnot, but it's all about the same idea in a sense of saying, well, I want to play what I find fun, what I find interesting, but I've got to keep all this other stuff in mind when I'm playing a game. Like, and that's why it's hard to play some of these jankier cards and whatnot sometimes, because it's like, oh, this is a really cool effect, but like, it's 6 mana, and am I going to get the time to play it? Well, you know what? Let's just say, hey guys, you know what? I have this deck that I've got all these janky, 6 and 7 and 8 drops and whatnot in. Let's play some like old school style Magic. We're all just playing, big, battle cruiser style decks that don't get going till turn, 10, 12, whatever, like, and then don't get to winning till, turn 20 or something or whatever else it is. You can play those games, or you can just be like, guys, I'm playing my slow deck, that doesn't really get going until like turn 8 or whatever else it is. So, just, keep that in mind or whatever. I want to be in this game too. I don't want somebody to, and that's another thing that some people, again, I keep saying this, should take into consideration. Not that you say, oh, well, I'm not going to win or whatever, but you should be saying, well, I'm going to give these people a chance to play the game and a chance to try to do something, because I'm playing a really powerful deck and I can just win at any time pretty much, because these people are just playing much weaker decks than mine. So, like, well, where's the fault or where's the problem in me letting them have fun? And yes, like, you could say, oh, well, that's not technically correct play or whatever, that sort of thing. But it doesn't matter. Like, it's one of those things. This is a format where you can kind of do whatever you want. And again, if you've got the win in hand, for the most part, why worry? Like, you can just win at any time. Just let those other people have their fun and move on. Because, like, obviously you've come to the wrong table with the wrong kind of deck, and you don't want to leave people with the sour experience. You want to leave people with like, oh, that was cool, and then finally, you won or whatever. But we all had fun. So that's what you want to leave people with, rather than leaving people with like, oh, that was crappy. You just won, and we didn't, get a chance to play this game. So we don't want to play with you again, like, or whatnot, or we don't want to play against that deck again. Like, again, like, it's one of those things. But if you've got that deck where it is kind of slow and people are like, oh, I haven't seen, this card played in ages, or whatever. Oh, yeah, this is my pet card, and, like, blah, blah, blah. Or I opened it in a pack, or I traded for it, or whatever. Like, you've got those stories, or you've got that attachment behind those cards again, and whatnot. It makes it that much easier when somebody says something about a card and you go, oh, I haven't seen that played in a long time, or whatever, and that sort of thing. Because, again, you mostly don't see those things played, but or whatnot, or you don't see that kind of strategy or whatnot in this commander, because, well, people have worked out that that's not the most optimal kind of way to play it, in a sense. But playing optimally sometimes isn't the most fun. Like, again, as I sort of said, sometimes you should just let people like play the game out and see how it goes and have fun with it and just enjoy it. Just enjoy the ride of the game. And again, like, sometimes if I've been sitting there, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. If I've been the person that's been dominating the whole game, which again doesn't happen a lot, but still, then if people finally get to turn the corner on me and start to take me down, well, I'll let them sometimes, because, hey, I get it, I've been dominating this whole game, and eventually they'll get tired of like attacking me or trying to take me down and that sort of thing, and I won't be the biggest threat anymore again. So it'll start becoming, oh yeah, we've probably done enough to you. You're not the biggest threat anymore, and or whatnot, and this person over here we've got to worry about or whatever now, and that sort of thing, and whatnot. Then I can sort of squeak back into that game and sort of have a bit more fun with it, and then suddenly, all of that, negative sort of style stuff has like gone away, because, you know, and again, sometimes it is the way to play a little bit slower and just go, okay, I don't want to draw too much attention to myself. I just want to kind of fly under the radar until I'm kind of like feeling like, oh yeah, I don't want to be the next big threat. I just kind of want to be here, so I don't want to be pulling too far ahead, but I just want to be kind of here and doing what I'm doing and trying to advance as best as I can while not being the biggest threat sometimes, so that, I can actually do what I want to do without, people being like, oh, we need to deal with you, like, no, you don't need to deal with me or whatever. You just need to chill out and deal with this other person, or focus on other things, or just have fun, and whatnot, and like, or introducing a mechanic like the monarch or whatever else, or the initiative. I know some people are against the initiative because there's too many choices and you never know like what's going on with it, unless it's kind of the thing that you're already built around, like type thing. Like, I know some people aren't as much in love with it as like they are with Monarch, because it's just simple. You just draw a card at the end step and that's it. There's no choices and whatnot and all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to track and whatnot. It's not so easy to track, the initiative and things like that. So I get that, but that's one of my like favorite mechanics that they introduced fairly recently, or yeah, still fairly recently, I guess. So you can have favorite mechanics and whatnot, even if some other people aren't, that crash hot on them or whatever, because it's like, oh, it's too much to keep track of, and I forgot where I was on the dungeon and things like that, or whatever, or I forgot about it during my upkeep or whatever, and because it's not in my deck, it's in your deck, and you just introduced it, etc., all that. But still, it's just one of those things that you've got to be aware of, like, making it easy for other people to go, well, I've introduced the initiative and that sort of thing. But it's also one of those things that if you not give out, but if you give out those tokens to say, this is the dungeon, this is what's happening, this is what's going on at your upkeep, or when you take it from somebody by attacking them for combat damage. You get to choose one of these rooms as long as you're connected to the room that's just above it in the path or whatever. And that sort of thing, etc. So, and if you want to know where I'm at, what I'm doing, or what Steve's doing, or what Alice is doing, or whatever they're doing, you can refer to your own little dungeon thing to say, oh, okay, I'm on, this, and I can get this, or this next turn, or whatever. Oh, and it looks like Adam's on that row, so he must have just, got this and got that, so he can get this and this and this, or whatever. So it is one of those things that does become a little bit complicated, but it's just one of those things that it is like tracking it is like one of those things that I didn't really initially like think of, and I needed to probably think of, and it's just one of those things that, not everyone's a huge fan of it because, again, it's not as simple as Monarch or whatever else. But again, it's one of those mechanics that I like, and I think it really adds to the game. And it really adds to, like, the back and forthness, like, same as Monarch, because suddenly, somebody has the Monarch, or somebody has the Monarch and the Initiative, which are very powerful together, which is why they're both in the same deck together. But again, that's kind of why, because I'm kind of trying to do that whole janky stuff, but still, it's one of those things that, now either I want to keep it as much as possible, but again, it doesn't always work out that way. So you want to be there and sort of like, okay, cool, all right, what's next for me, and what's next for my dungeon, and who can attack me or who cannot attack me, and what should I do? Should I block this? Things like that. It really adds to the game. And am I going to attack them to get the Monarch and that back, yes or no, or do I have something to get the Monarch and the Initiative back anyway, so I don't really need to attack them, but maybe I still want to attack them, so do I want to trigger the dungeon twice so that I get more value out of it? I don't get anything else off of Monarch, so I might as well not, either think about not playing that or whatever, that sort of thing, to get the Monarch again, because there's no real point because I've already got it, unless it does something really, really good otherwise. So it's just like, well, I already got the Monarch, and it's not really going to do me anything extra to get the Monarch again, other than putting this creature out or whatever. So, like, at that point, there's no point. So I might as well just, like, see what else I can do with the dungeon and things like that. So yeah, it does depend on what you're doing and what your mechanics are, but I think like, you can do whatever you want. That's the thing about this format, which is like one of the best things that I think that they made when they made this format, is like, you can do whatever you want to do, and I think that creativity, needs to come back into the format in some ways, because like, losing that creativity and losing that, oh, well, I can just find things, or I can just figure it out, or, like, I know some people aren't into that as much. They're much more like, oh, I only know cards if I, see them in person or pull them from a pack or whatever, like, I don't really look up cards. And it is one of those things where some people are more casual into it. I only know the stuff that's in the pre-con or whatever, and I'm not going to upgrade my deck. This was my deck from the pre-con, and maybe I opened some stuff from the set, or whatever, and I tossed some stuff from the set into my pre-con that just felt like this is a bit cooler or a bit better, or, just one of my more favorite cards or whatever. And that's fine. Again, like, again, you can do what you want, but again, it's just one of those things of saying, well, it's more about what you want out of it, not just like, well, like, do you want this? This card exists. No, I don't know that card exists. Would you want this card? Like, maybe, but how much is it? Is it, like, a lot of money? Then maybe not, because, like, I can't really be justifying to pay all this money for this card or whatever. Maybe I could proxy it or whatever, but I don't know, whatever. Like, so there's all that to really consider for other people. It's not just a simple, oh, your deck is bad because it's not power 10 deck or whatever. That's the wrong attitude to take, like, again, like, this format was meant to be like, we're going to jam some games and we're going to play some stuff and we're going to see what happens and we're going to try to play the things that, don't work in modern and don't work in standard and don't work in, whatever these other formats because they're just too expensive and they take too long to get to the point or whatever in those formats. So getting back to that somewhat, like, philosophy, I think is good. But anyway, guys, you can let me know what you think. All right, your thoughts down there in the comments below. Hope you've enjoyed this one. Hope you'll join me again in another one.